And they're all on steroids.
Stakes tomorrow night, my friend. All the needles in your ass, all the steroids will not help you.
Do you believe Jon Jones is a cheater?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Everybody's on steroids.
Testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, was given the green light by athletic commissions in 2008 and quickly became a matter of controversy amongst fighters and fans alike.
But I think where the waters really got murky is when TRT came in.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you need TRT? Like, why do you need that? You're looking for an advantage.
TRT, people don't know what it is, so everyone yells and screams that it's, you know, the devil.
Improved speed, strength, endurance, not only in training but in competition.
When you have the knowledge of a 12-year veteran and you have a body of a 28-year-old, it's just not fair. It's not fair at all.
A number of fighters came out as using TRT publicly, including Dan Henderson, Todd Duffy, and Chael Sonnen.
All on doctor's recommendation just to stay within normal limits and to have a healthier life. And
if you're going to associate a guy with TRT, make sure you also associate the fact that it's legal and it's not banned.
But the problem for many was just how easy it was to get a doctor to sign off on giving someone still in their 30s TRT.
All it took was for fighters to go to a doctor and get a letter to say that this fighter needs testosterone replacement therapy because his testosterone is low.
I mean, there's no need to mention names, but I know a guy who was in his 20s who was on TRT. It's like, what the if you're on testosterone replacement and you're in your 20s and you're competing in MMA, you shouldn't be competing in MMA.
Perhaps the most controversial user of hormone replacement therapy was Vitor Belfort.
When he was on TRT, he was a different kind of human being. He was just completely different than he is in any other circumstance.
Many suspected that Vitor had used steroids in his late teens and early 20s, and this had caused his natural testosterone to fall off a cliff when he was in his early 30s. So many fighters felt Belfort was being unfairly rewarded for cheating when he was younger, by being allowed to use TRT in his late 30s.
But then we just found out during camp he had a 1200 testosterone score. I'm 10 years younger than him and he's got a way higher testosterone level. This guy's still cheating. I'm gonna make him pay for it tomorrow night.
The straw that broke the camel's back for many was when a juiced-up TRT tour was matched up with fan favorite Michael Bisping.
I mean, he's redlining his engine. It's like, bang! So he was going into that cage redlined.
As I said, on February 27, 2014, the Nevada State Athletic Commission finally voted to ban TRT, and the UFC immediately followed suit.
With the age of TRT now in the rearview mirror, you could be forgiven for assuming the UFC's doping problems were in the past. However, the truth of the matter was that although the removal of TRT meant blatant abuse of drugs by old men was long gone, that didn't mean that the other athletes were not still taking full advantage of performance-enhancing drugs.
90% of the athletes in the UFC at this point were taking PEDs. Some form, easily. And it was only idiots like me that weren't doing it.
Programs.
In 2023, Conor McGregor was still trying to make his comeback after his leg break. However, one thing was stopping him: USADA. It was heavily speculated that while he was away recovering, McGregor had taken some form of steroid to help him heal better.
That's when you should do it. When you have something like a catastrophic leg injury, I mean, he's got rods in his legs. He's had multiple surgeries. It's not just one.
Yeah. Conor, is he gonna come back? I heard he hadn't got tested once this year from USADA.
Yeah, I did. It's like, what the dude? He looks like a clean 195.
Since he wasn't currently in the USADA testing pool, this meant he wasn't failing any tests. But he would have to rejoin the program and receive a clean test for at least 6 months before he could compete again.
You know, I was crystal clear that if they fight him within the 6 months, that was going to be a deal breaker to our relationship. And, you know, a month or so later, that ended up them saying they wanted to go a different direction.
And when the UFC kept pushing for an exemption for Conor, USADA made a public announcement that they in the UFC would be cutting ties at the end of the year as a result.
Despite a positive and productive meeting about a contract renewal in May 2023, USADA says, the UFC did an about-face and informed USADA on Monday, October 9th, that it was going in a different direction. Okay? The relationship between USADA and UFC became untenable given the statements made by UFC leaders and others questioning USADA's principled stance that McGregor not be allowed to fight without being in the testing pool.
He was incredibly disappointed that I informed him that we would not be continuing the partnership at the end of the year. So this wasn't a situation where he came to us and said, this is untenable and we can't continue. It was, hey, great to talk to you, you know, looking forward to the future. And I said, look, as I've given you every indication over the last few months, I've been exploring different alternatives and I'm going in a different direction.
At this point, Hunter claims USADA decided to fabricate the story about McGregor to disparage the UFC.
And he ultimately made a comment to the effect of, you and Jeff are going to go out there and you're going to tell people that you can run a better program and that we are no longer the gold standard. And I replied, that's exactly what's going to happen because that's the truth. And I'm sorry that, you know, he didn't like that answer, but that's the reality.
So if USADA was so threatened by the UFC's new anti-doping program,
what they're saying is Drug-Free Sport International does all the drug test collecting for all these other sports. And in a way to make this program more credible, essentially all Drug-Free Sport International does is collect the urine, collect the blood. That's all they do. That's their only role in this. They are a UPS, USPS, FedEx,
which appear to be enforced by combat sports anti-doping, and its president, George Piro.
George will make every, and I stress, every final decision in the program. That authority will be his and his alone.
The CSAD seems to be a new organization created especially for and funded by the UFC, with an underqualified president, Piro, chosen as its overseer.
This isn't a company that is known and has like a reputation of doing randomized drug testing. No, they just pulled a guy. Oh, he interviewed Saddam Hussein. He did an interrogation with Saddam Hussein. He was on 60 Minutes, not once, but twice. The UFC's created the company. The UFC's handpicked the president of the company who will oversee all decision-making with the company.
Is a progressive brain condition that's believed to be caused by repeated blows to the head. Over time, repeated impacts can lead to a buildup of abnormal proteins in the brain.
The symptoms of CTE can be variable, but oftentimes it's a personality shift, a behavioral change, maybe mood changes like depression. There are things like aggression and violent behaviors, impulsivity, a short fuse.
Joel Lockwood found 5 studies that estimated between 28% and 46% of all matches ended as a result of KO or TKO.
It's a huge thing. It's got me crippled.
Do you remember that?
Were we here at those?
No, it was in Los Angeles.
No, I don't remember.
That was 4 years ago. How would you say that your condition has changed over the past 4 years?
You know what? It's got worse.
Kat Zingano also found herself struggling with symptoms of brain trauma and found the UFC not all that helpful in assisting her.
My memory was, and these are all things that I went to the UFC PI to talk to them about because I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I want to fight. They offered me to fight Chris Cyborg at 145. Money out of my pocket trying to figure this out because none of this is covered by the UFC, especially because, you know, not something I claimed in a fight.
So even though it clearly came from that fight, you still don't get covered? What?
And then there's Nam Pham's speech deteriorating.
At my school, the Model Academy.
One recent UFC veteran to make the news was Julie Kedzie. After retiring from mixed martial arts in 2013, Kedzie reported to have suffered from depression, anxiety, hyperactivity, impulsiveness, and lack of sleep since wrapping up her fighting career. All of these are symptoms of traumatic encephalopathy, and in late 2023, Kedzie agreed to donate her brain for research after she dies.
I don't believe I've ever had a traumatic brain injury from a fight.
One important thing to remember in all this, these are prize fighters. They're knowingly risking their lives for financial compensation. So, how much are they being paid? The short answer, not very much.
I'm coming for the money, you piece of...
The UFC holds roughly a 90% share of both domestic and international market space in MMA. This gives them control over not just the fighters in their roster, but the potential growth of the other promotions as well. Despite the massive growth in UFC profits year after year, fighter pay does not correlate with this increase. In fact, one could argue that since fighters can no longer wear their own sponsors, they're earning less on average than they were 10 years ago.
They need to grow. This whole thing needs to grow together.
Our lives are on the f***ing line. Healthcare needs to be taken care of. Our health needs to be taken care of.
Even potential superstars like Paddy Pimblett are signed onto a basic 12 and 12 contract. And sure, they can receive bonuses, but that entails taking more risks. Just take a look at the fighters who've received the most bonuses in UFC history. Notice how every single name on that list has also taken a significant amount of damage. So is fighting worth it? For some. We ask fighters why they fight. Some love it, some were bullied, and some have nothing else. But the most common answer,
I'm fighting for money.
Show me that money!
And the UFC knows this. They know the main pool of people they recruit from are often desperate and struggling financially. You can even see how it can frustrate the UFC when a fighter has made enough money and seems to be too inactive in their eyes. They understand how much more difficult it would be for them to matchmake if the whole roster made enough money that they didn't need to fight on demand.
I think Francis is in a place right now where he doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position.
This, of course, raises a question about individual autonomy. If a person wants to fight and pursue greatness, who are we to tell them no?
Take us inside the mindset. When someone tells you what to do and what you should do, well, how does that make you feel?
That's why I think I'm a fighter in the beginning, because I'm never able to have somebody tell me what to do, right? Real jobs were...
After all, there are hundreds of life-threatening extreme sports and hobbies that we don't stop people from participating in. Surely, if someone's fully aware of all the risk, then it's ultimately their choice to step into the cage. And it would appear that the majority of fighters, at least in the professional leagues, are very aware of the dangers of fighting.
My record is 9-1-1. I know the damage of what this sport can do and what consequences are, but I know what I'm getting myself into. I chose to fight.
I do, and I just know what I signed up for. I just don't want to, obviously I don't want to be like someone with a glass jaw when I'm like 40 and I'm going to be fighting like for peanuts and I'm still trying to survive, but I'm getting knocked out every fight. I want to achieve great things, and I felt the only thing I know how to achieve great things is fighting. It makes me feel alive. It feels like it's therapy for me, and it's like peace in a way.
Although some, less so.
Words back to me, because I don't know anything about it. I don't know a damn thing about this head trauma. I don't know anything about a concussion. I don't know anything about wear or tear. I don't know anything about it.
But why are fighters willing to take this risk in the first place? When we look at the demographic of fighters across the UFC roster, we see the majority of them come from underclass backgrounds, and they chose fighting because they lacked the opportunities to do anything else.
5 years old, I was sweeping the floor, and I was like, man, this is not what I'm meant to be. Like, I'm supposed to be something great, but everybody around me is like, no, this is what you do. You live in this little town and you follow the rules.
He delved into growing up in Stockton and not having a father figure at home and having to take care of Nate and be the head of household and not liking to fight and the damage that it causes you.
We don't, if one of us go to war, we all go to war. But you guys, I'm gonna go have a war for you guys.
I plan for a war.
It will be a bloody war. And it's gonna be an absolute war, and we're gonna be thankful.
This is the...
And if anyone can get caught, anyone's life can change.
I was a professional boxer from Puerto Rico.
Wow. And they found lesions in my brain, and which led to further studies, and I found that I have dementia.
Weight cutting has long been a controversial and dangerous practice in combat sports.
The best way to fight is to cheat and to drain all yourself of fluids and then pretend that you're 160 pounds, then get back on the scale 15 hours later at 185. That's crazy.
In the Ultimate Fighting Championship, fighters routinely undergo extreme measures to shed significant amounts of weight in order to gain a size and strength advantage over their opponents.
So I'm dehydrated for 12, 13, 14 hours. I think it's dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because you have to cut 10 pounds in 4 hours. If you don't, you're screwed.
Today we explore to what extent weight cutting has impacted the sport of MMA in the past, the struggles fighters still endure, and what, if anything, can be done to improve things for the future.
I'm sitting there cutting weight, and I look like Skeletor, then 14 hours later I look like He-Man.
Weight cutting is the process of rapidly losing weight, primarily through dehydration, in the days leading up to a fight to meet a specific weight class limit. Fighters then rehydrate and replenish their bodies after the weigh-in, often gaining back 10 to 20 pounds or more within 24 hours. This practice allows them to compete in a lower weight class while retaining their natural size and strength. It is not uncommon for fighters to cut 15 to 30 pounds in the weeks and days before a fight. For example, lightweight fighters often walk around at 170 to 180 pounds during their training camps and weigh in at 155 pounds, while welterweights may naturally weigh 190 to 200 pounds and weigh in at 170 pounds.
Тренироваться у меня было 91 килограмм. Я должен был 29 декабря показать 70 ровно.
Some fighters have even been known to cut as much as 30 to 40 pounds, pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. This drastic weight loss is achieved through a combination of severe calorie restriction, excessive sweating via saunas, hot baths, or rubber suits.
I do a fight camp. I'm starving myself. I'm having to cut, 30, 40 pounds.
Conor McGregor is often used as an example of the benefits one can gain from cutting weight. The Irishman was so effective at cutting down to 145 pounds despite his massive frame. It was impossible to miss just how much bigger McGregor was than his fellow featherweights.
The featherweights, they hit like flyweights, so it's nice down there just destroying them and killing that whole division.
Although the process required for Conor to make 145 was undoubtedly brutal, the current downturn in Conor's lightweight efforts could also be down to his extracurricular activities outside of the cage. And many speculate this is the true differentiator between the two versions of Conor.
Partying is weakness for the soul, my friend, so I try and avoid it.
Although being significantly larger than one's opponent can be a big advantage in any combat sport, there is also something to be said for going too far with your downsizing. The long and short-term health consequences of repeated weight cutting are well documented and alarming. Rapid dehydration and rehydration put immense strain on the body, particularly the kidneys, heart, and brain. Over time, this can lead to chronic health issues such as kidney damage, cardiovascular problems, and hormonal imbalances.
Every system in your body needs water, so if you don't give it water, your kidneys are going to shut down, and that's going to be very painful.
One of the most immediate dangers of weight cutting is the risk of severe dehydration, which can cause dizziness, confusion, and even organ failure. In extreme cases, it can be fatal. In 2013, Brazilian fighter Leandro Souza died while attempting to cut 15 kilograms for a fight. His death was attributed to complications from severe dehydration and kidney failure, serving as a grim reminder of the risks associated with weight cutting. And in 2015, one championship fighter, Yang Jianbing, also died after suffering a fatal heart attack following his own drastic weight cut. Repeated weight cutting can also have a lasting impact on a fighter's cognitive function. Dehydration reduces blood flow to the brain, increasing the risk of concussions and long-term brain damage.
You know you cut a lot of weight, that fills up your chin.
100%.
This is particularly concerning in a sport like MMA, where fighters are already at risk of head trauma from strikes and submissions.
He's seen here walking into the sauna with a padded suit on. Not only did Till go blind, but he almost died.
But despite these risks, fighters will still take weight cutting to the extreme. Someone who could be credited with perhaps the most extreme weight cut in UFC history is TJ Dillashaw.
But goddamn, dude, I saw you the week of the fight on television.
Yeah.
And I was like, look at his face.
It looks like a tweaker.
In his quest to become a two-division champion, TJ would have to dedicate his whole training camp to cutting a further 10 pounds off his already shredded frame. Although Dillashaw would make the weight, the strain his body was under made him fragile come fight night. Not only would TJ get knocked out, but he would later test positive for EPO, which it transpired he had taken to help his body exert itself to get down to 125.
It wasn't blood. I just didn't listen to anyone at the time and drank a hot chocolate and Ferrero Rocher on the way to the venue.
Now fighting up a weight class, Pimblett still seems extremely sunken in and gaunt on the scale. But perhaps more concerning has been his post-fight eating habits. While this has been a great marketing tool for Paddy, eating pizza in press conferences and completing food challenges on his YouTube channel,
I'd rather be fat and happy than ripped, and like these people who are ripped all year round aren't happy, I'm not arsed.
But in his more serious moments, even Pimblett admits that the constant obsession with dieting in MMA has led to him having some form of eating disorder.
I think I've got a little bit. I think I've got a bit of an eating disorder because of MMA.
Martial arts as entertainment is a good thing, and the answer is no. Do I think that mixed martial arts as an entertainment is anything a Christian can be part of or can watch? The answer is just a really clear no. Because while knowing how to fight, while knowing those skills, while having a certain strength is noble, there is nothing that is noble about dominating someone or beating another human being into submission for someone else's entertainment. In fact, it's the exact opposite of highlighting the dignity of the human person. Mixed martial arts as entertainment does nothing other than subjectivize and strip the dignity of every human being. And for what? For my entertainment, for my viewing pleasure. Because I thought it was so cool how that other man jumped on the other man's chest and just started punching him in the face until he tapped out or passed out. Now, keep this in mind. I think martial arts is pretty phenomenal. But there is a massive difference between martial arts as a discipline, as a noble endeavor, as an honorable way to conduct yourself, and mixed martial arts as entertainment.
They're wearing is coming above the knee, then that is not permitted. And again, in UFC, in the fighting or MMA, mixed martial arts, you strike the face. And the Prophet said, you should not strike the face. So striking at the face of the opponent is not permitted. So watching a game which involves, if you're watching judo, no problem. Because in judo, the dress is very well, the judo dress they wear covers the full body. In fact, it's above the ankle, it's more for sunnah. And there is close contact, there is no striking on the face, there's throwing of a person. So judo per se is good. Whether you do judo or you watch judo, no problem. But UFC, the ultimate fight championship, where it is MMA, mixed martial arts, where you're allowed, and most of the time they punch, or you get the maximum points when you punch on the face, and punching on the face is prohibited in Islam. So playing such game is not permitted.
Keep it halal. Habib.
So whether you want to invest in stocks, shares, gold,
or even in property, keep it halal.